Good day, everyone. We are going to talk the historical antecedents of science and technology. When we say historical antecedents, these are something happened or existed before. This section tackles how social context shaped and were shaped by science and technology across three historical periods. By introducing the historical antecedents of science and technology, this section explores the dynamic interactions between different societal factors in science and technology, along with a discussion of these antecedents during the ancient period, Middle Ages, and modern ages. This section also includes a discussion on important Philippine inventions and innovations. It emphasizes the various social, cultural, economic, and political impacts of science and technological innovation throughout history. One of the key interests of STS as an academic field is the history of science and technology. The history of science and technology is a field of history that examines how the understanding of the natural world and ability to manipulate it have changed over the millennium and centuries. As a strand of STS, the history of science and technology focuses on how science and technology have changed across time, like how current digital systems such as computers, smartphones, tablets, and laptops have evolved over time. The typewriter was replaced by digital systems such as computer and the word processing software. Telephones have evolved over time into versions that are portable, such as mobile phones, and more recently, smartphones. Also, it explores the impacts of scientific and technological innovations on the prevailing social, cultural, political, and economic contexts throughout history. Conversely, it also pays attention to the conditions that shape science and technology. Quite often, interests lie in historical antecedents of scientific and technological innovations. The word antecedent is defined as precursor to the unfolding or existence of something. Just like what I've said earlier, it is something that existed before. The importance of studying the historical antecedents of science and technology is that the people in ancient times were able to discover and invent things that would impact the lives of the modern people. Also, the importance of studying the historical antecedent is because through history we can learn how past societies, systems, cultures, and technologies were built, how they operated, and how they have changed. In this lesson, we're going to tackle the three historical periods, which are ancient period, Middle Ages, modern ages, and as well as the inventions by Filipino artists.
Ancient period. The rise of ancient civilizations paved the way for advances in science and technology. These advances during the ancient period allowed civilizations to flourish by finding better ways of communication, transportation, self-organization, and of living in general. Ancient wheel. Ancient wheel was used for transportation and agriculture. No one knows exactly who invented the wheel and when. There is, however, a general agreement that the first wheel grew out of a mechanical device called potter's wheel. This wheel was a flat disc composed of hardened clay. It was spun horizontally on an axis to assist the potter to mold wet clay into uniformly shaped jars and bowls. They believe that the Sumerians invented the potter's wheel shortly after 3500 BC because there were no other ancient civilization used a similar device at the time. Nonetheless, it would not be until 1000 to 1500 years later that wheels were fitted to carts. Paper. The first writing surface was made in ancient Egypt from a plant called Cyperus papyrus, which is the royal plant of Egypt. It was used as a writing material as early as 3000 BC. It was made using the stalk or stem of the plant whose central pith was cut into thin strips, pressed together, and dried to form a smooth, thin writing surface. Before, stone is used when writing, but because of its difficulty writing on stone, it was only reserved for very important occasion. With the advent of the papyrus, documentation became efficient and records were kept and stood of the time. Shadow. Shadoof is a hand-operating device used for lifting water out of a well to irrigate land. The shadoof consisted of a long wooden pole balanced on a beam. The pole had a bucket attached by a rope to one end and a heavy weight acting as a counterweight on the other end. It was invented by Egyptians who lived near the Nile River. Antikythera mechanism. Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek hand-powered orrery used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance. It was invented by Greek scientists between 150 to 1000 BC. It is similar to a clock in the way that the case has circular face and hands. There is a knob on the side makes it possible to wound forward or backward. It is described as the oldest example of an analog computer and was discovered in 1902 retrieved from the waters of Antikythera, Greece. Lastly, Yolipile. Yolipile is also known as Hero's engine. It was invented by Hieron of Alexandria during the 1st century AD. It is first known device to transform steam into rotary motion. Yolipile consisted of a specially made spear on top of a water kettle. The steam escaped from the spear from the bent tube, causing the spear to revolve. It is simply regarded as a toy to amuse visitors and was not used for any practical purpose.
Middle Ages. Between the collapse of the Roman Empire in the century AD and the colonial expansion of Western Europe in late 15th century AD. If 15th century will designate on its own time, it is about 500 to 1400 to 1500 CE or Common Era, and also known as the Middle Ages or Medieval period. These include steady increase of new inventions, introductions of innovations in traditional production, and emergence of scientific thinking and method. And at this period, marami ng mga inventions and innovations lalo na sa mga traditional production na kung saan ay na-improve ito at napakinabangan. Heavy flow. Most important technological innovations during the Middle Ages is the invention of the heavy plow. Clay soil, despite being more fertile than lighter types of soil, was not cultivated because of its heavy weight. Through the inventions of the heavy plow, it became possible to harness clay soil. Professor Anderson of the University of Southern Denmark succinctly describes the impact of invention of the heavy plow. The heavy plow turned European agriculture and economy on its head. Suddenly, the fields with the heavy, fatty, and moist clay soils became those that gave the greatest yields. Heavy plow was developed in China's Han Empire in the 1st and 2nd century, and the man who invented this is John Fowler, an English agricultural engineer and inventor. Mas naging popular ang agriculture sa Philippines because of the Spanish regime, wherein industries encouraged and developed and supplied the major needs of the Spain colonizers. At doon natin na-adapt ang paggamit ng heavy plow. Using the heavy plow, it breaks up the blocky structure of the soil which can aid in drainage and root growth. Gunpowder. Gunpowder was invented around 850 AD. Chinese alchemists accidentally invented black powder or gunpowder. Since its invention, the gunpowder has allowed for more advanced warfare. From fiery arrows to cannons and grenades, the gunpowder has prompted foundation for the functionality of almost every new weapon used in war since its invention. Gunpowder was invented in China by alchemists who tried to find elixir of immortality. But before gunpowder invented, all weapons depended on the user's strength. Dahil sa pagkakadiskubre sa gunpowder, halos lahat ng mga inimbentong armas ay ginagamit ito, like flaming arrows and flying weapons. Gunpowder has been used for numerous purposes throughout history, including firearms, cannons, explosives, and fireworks. Paper money. Although it was not until the 17th century that banknotes began to be used in Europe, the first known versions of paper money could be traced back to the Chinese in 17th century AD as an offshoot of the invention of black printing. which is similar to stamping. Paper money is an invention of the Song dynasty in China in the 11th century CE or Common Era, nearly 20 centuries after the earliest known use of metal coins. However, the idea of assigning value to a market piece of paper did not immediately become popular. In fact, when the Mongols attempted to introduce paper money into the Middle East market in the 13th century, it did not gain immediate success. So that means 13th century pa lang ay pinapakilala na nila ang paper money, pero hindi pa ito tinatangkilik at kinikilala ng mga tao. Before the introduction of paper money, precious metals such as gold and silver were used as currency. However, the idea of assigning value to a market piece of paper did not immediately become popular. In fact, when the Mongols attempted to introduce paper money into the Middle East market in the 13th century, it did not gain immediate success. And they also realized that using paper money helps them to avoid carrying thousands of coins, silver, and gold, and also it is more easier to transport. Mechanical clock. In the ancient time, a Nicathera mechanism is the device for timekeeping and recording sprung back then, until the Middle Ages that clockwork technology was developed. In the Middle Ages, Pope Sylvester II built a clock for a German town in 996 and it is considered one of the oldest clocks. By the 11th century, clocks were being used in different parts of Europe. The development of mechanical clocks paved the way for accurately keeping track of time. Because of this new invention, it drastically changed the way days were spent and work patterns were established. Mechanical clock changed the system of time measurement. Before the invention of the mechanical clock, there was a possibility for a precise measurement of time, but it enabled people to measure time in ways that were not possible before. The spinning wheel. Another important invention of the Middle Ages is the spinning wheel, a machine used for transforming fiber into thread or yarn, and eventually woven into cloth on a loom. The spinning wheel revolutionized the production of yarn, which increased productivity and led to the establishment of a thriving medieval textile industry. Regarding with the origin of the spinning wheel, it is theorized that the Indians invented the spinning wheel between 6th and 11th century AD. According to White on 1971, the invention of the spinning wheel sped up the rate at which fiber would be spun by a factor of 10 to 100 times. Nang naimbento ang spinning wheel ay mas napabilis at napadali ang paggawa ng tela.
So now let's discuss about the antecedents in modern ages. Here we can tackle some important inventions in modern ages, named compound microscope by Hans and Zacharias Janssen, telescope by Galileo Galilei, and the Jacquard loom by Joseph Marie Jacquard, and the engine-powered airplane by Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright, and the last, the television by Logie Baird. Modern ages. As the world population steadily increased, people of the modern ages realized the utmost importance of increasing the efficiency of transportation, communication, and production. Industrialization took place with greater risk in human health, food safety, and environment, which had to be addressed as scientific and technological progress unfolded at an unimaginable speed. So first invention in modern ages is compound microscope. A Dutch spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is credited for an invention of the first compound microscope in 1590. Zacharias began experimenting with lenses by putting together several lenses on a tube, which led to an amazing discovery that an object, when placed near the end of the tube, can be magnified far larger than what a simple magnifying lens can do. Today, the compound microscope is an important instrument in many scientific studies, such as in the areas of medicine, forensic studies, tissue analysis, atomic studies, and genetics. Zacharias Janssen, he is associated with the invention of the first optical telescope, or the first truly compound microscope. It is a tool containing two lenses which magnify and a variety of knobs used to move and focus the specimen. It was capable of their size when fully closed, and up to 10 times when extended to the maximum. With this compound microscope device, People were able to observe organisms that were normally unseen by the naked, which was a key in discovering new means in preventing and curing various illnesses. So, this is a breakthrough on the field of medicine and also the field of microbiology. The second, the telescope. It was invented by Galileo Galilei. This invention could magnify objects 20 times larger than the Dutch perspective glasses. It was Galileo who first used the telescope skyward and made important astronomical discoveries and identified on the moon. Galileo's remarkable technological contribution drastically changed and study of astronomy. Galileo Galilei was an Italian astronomer, physicist, and engineer. He invented the telescope. Telescope perhaps the single most important technological invention in the study of astronomy during modern ages. During modern ages was the practical telescope invented by Galileo. Galileo is the only first man to see a crater. He went to discover sunspot, the four large moons of Jupiter, and the ring of Saturn. His telescope was similar to opera glasses. It is used an arrangement of glass lenses magnify objects. The third one is Jacquard loom. As the Industrial Revolution reached full speed, the Jacquard loom was considered as one of the most critical drivers in the revolution, built by French weaver Joseph-Marie Jacquard loom. The Jacquard loom simplifies textile manufacturing. Prior to the invention of the Jacquard loom, a draw loom was used which required two individuals to operate the weaver and drawboy if figure designs on textiles were needed. Jacquard loom was invented by Joseph-Marie Jacquard. He is a weaver and merchant painted his invention in 1804. He knew pattern could cloth be woven or weaving silk. Jacquard loom is a loom machine developed in early 80s that used a series of punch cards to control weave operations. The Jacquard loom is also an important antecedent of modern computer technology as it can demonstrate the use of punch card to instruct a machine to carry out complex tasks, making different textile patterns. Prior to the invention of the Jacquard loom, a draw loom was used which required two individuals to operate the weaver and drawboy. A figured design on the textiles were needed, such as intensified manual labor and greater effort had to be exerted to produce complex designs. Next are the engine-powered airplane. Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright are credited for designing and successfully operating the first engine-powered aircraft. Orville and Wilbur proved that aircraft could fly without airfoil-shaped wings. They demonstrated this in their original flying machine patent, showing that slightly titled wings, which they refers to as aeroplanes, were the key features of the powered aircraft. The Wright brothers, Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright, were American aviation pioneers generally credited with inventing, building, and flying the world's first successful motor-operated airplane. The Wright brothers approached the design of powered aircraft and flight scientifically. Their pioneering success marked an age of powered flights. Sans modern knowledge on aerodynamics and a comprehensive understanding of the working of aircraft wings, the Wright brothers were brilliant scientists who paved the way for modern aircraft technology. The last, the television. The Scottish engineer John Logie Baird is largely credited for the invention of the modern television. Baird successfully televised objects in outline in 1924, recognizable human faces in 1925, and moving objects in 1926, and projected colored images in 1928. Baird television technology caught on really swiftly. In fact, the British Broadcasting Corporation used this for its earliest television programming in 1929. John Logie Baird, our inventor and engineering achieved many firsts. in television technology. He started experimenting with television in 1922 and took out his first television patent in 1923. He demonstrated the first prototype television in 1925. Despite being the first television invented, Bird's television was later on criticized for its fuzzy and flickering images, primarily because it was mechanical compared to electronic versions that were developed much later. He invented a television to gain scientific credibility. Bird gave the first formal public demonstration of his invention at Fifth Street to prove that his system could successfully transmit and revive pictures.
Inventions by Filipino artists. The Philippines boasts of its own history and tradition of scientific and technological innovations. Filipinos have long been known for their ingenuity. Ingenuity meaning we are clever. We Filipinos have our own unique sense of design, creativity, and resourcefulness. We invent things as an alternative sa mga bagay na hindi available, and of course, these inventions was because of necessity. Yung pangangailangan natin kaya na-invento yung mga ganitong bagay. Most of these inventions appeal to the unique social and cultural context of the archipelagic nation. Throughout Philippine history, Filipinos are responsible for developing many scientific and technological innovations focused on navigation, traditional shipbuilding, textiles, food processing, indigenous arts and techniques, and even cultural inventions. Let us now go to the inventions of our Filipino artists, and the first one is the electric jeepney or the e-jeepney. The jeepney is one of the most recognizable national symbols of the Philippines and the most popular mode of public transportation in the country. As you can see naman here in the province and even in the city, there are jeeps. As we all know, jeepneys are only available here in the Philippines, unlike in the other country. It is also perhaps one of the most enduring symbols of Filipino ingenuity. For Filipinos' ingenuity, they designed and improvised to build a jeepney from scratch out of military jeeps that the Americans left in the country after World War II. As demand for more responsive transportation technology arose, the e-jeepney was introduced in Metro Manila and Bacolod City. The e-jeepney was invented in order to solve air pollution issues since the traditional jeepneys belch smokes that affect the environment. There are jeepneys na grabe talaga yung buga ng usok. Therefore, e-jeepneys are designed to be environment friendly, eliminating noise and air pollution as they run on electricity, unlike sa traditional jeepney na ang gamit nila is diesel. And also, e-jeepneys are way more cheaper than the traditional jeepneys. Sa e-jeepney kasi, ang ginagamit lang is electricity. Hindi katulad sa traditional jeepney na kailangan mo pang magpagas. And as of the moment din kasi, yung gasolina, nagmahal na rin. And dahil na rin sa pagmahal ng presyo ng gasolina, yung mga kinikita ng mga driver is maliit. And halos hindi na bumabalik sa kanila yung pagrota nila sa pagsasakay ng mga pasahero. Therefore, yung e-jeepney is mas mura kasi nga sa electricity siya gumagana, and inaalaw niya yung mga driver na mas kumita ng mas malaki compared dun sa traditional jeepney. Additionally, the e-jeepney was introduced by the Philippine Utility Vehicle or the PHUV in year 2007. Next is the erythromycin. It was invented by Dr. Abelardo Aguilar. Erythromycin is used to treat a wide variety of bacterial infections. There is a backstory behind this discovery. Aguilar was studying samples he obtained from a mall cemetery, or some referred it as his own backyard, and he stumbled upon a species of bacteria called Streptomyces erythraeus. Taking note of the antibacterial activity observed, dinala niya yung samples sa research laboratory kung saan siya nagtatrabaho, which is the L.A. Lilly and Company. Yung mga scientists ng Eli Lilly, nagawa nilang i-isolate yung erythromycin mula sa sample, and the product was launched commercially in 1952 under the brand name Ilozone after the Philippine region of the Iloilo where it was originally collected. Unfortunately, Aguilar did not receive further credit or compensation for his groundbreaking discovery, and the U.S. company owned merits for his discovery. The medical incubator was invented by the world-renowned Filipino pediatrician and national scientist, Fidel Mundo. She is credited for the invention of the incubator and jaundice relieving device. Del Mundo was the first woman pediatrician to be admitted to the prestigious Harvard University's School of Medicine. She is also the founder of the first pediatric hospital in the country. Her pioneering work in pediatrics that spanned a total of 8 decades won her the 1977 Ramon Magsaysay Award, Asia's premier prize granted to outstanding individuals whose selfless service remarkably contributed to the betterment of society. Her original improvised incubator consisted of two native laundry baskets of different sizes that are placed one inside the other. Warmth is generated by bottles with hot water placed around the baskets. A makeshift hood over the baskets allows oxygen to circulate inside the incubator. Del Mundo's incubator was particularly outstanding as it addressed the state of Philippine rural communities that had no electricity to aid the regulation of body temperatures of newborn babies. She invented the bamboo incubator in 1941. Incubators are important because they provide controlled environments for premature babies. Incubators really are like a second womb or a safe bubble surrounding a baby. Mole remover was invented in year 2000 by Dr. Rolando de la Cruz that had the ability to easily remove moles and warts from the skin without the need for any surgical procedure shot to fame. This mole remover was made of extracts of cashew nuts, which are very common in the Philippines. De la Cruz won a gold medal for his invention in the International Invention, Innovation, Industrial Design and Technology exhibition in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2000. The formula is affordable and painless and is scarless procedure. It also comes in a brand name Dewart, and meron siyang set which includes the cleaning solution, herbal cream, preparation, sunblock cream, drying solution, and the distilled water. Last one is the banana ketchup. We Filipinos love to dip our food to a ketchup like french fries, hot dog, fish, or chicken. Today we have tomato and banana ketchup to choose from. Banana ketchup was invented by the Filipino food technologist Maria Orosa. Historical accounts posit that Orosa invented the banana ketchup at the backdrop of World War II when there was a huge shortage of tomatoes. One day, she created a banana sauce with mashed bananas, vinegars, and spices. The brownish yellow color was not very appetizing, so a little red dye was added, turning it to what is today known as the banana ketchup. That would be all. Thank you for listening.